What's up, Corey? Welcome.
What's up, Reezy? I'm looking forward to it, man.
How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. It's a little chilly over here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Probably a lot warmer where you are, but can't complain, man.
Yeah, awesome, man. Well, this is a good earlier today you were saying it's a full circle moment and let's talk about that a little bit. So, if you're new to the show, if you've never seen me on a live stream, I apologize. I'm terrible YouTuber, but we're coming back and I'm working on getting back to some kind of regularity of posting. Corey is a 5-year full-time wholesale seller on Amazon, 7-figure seller, but he started selling on Amazon via watching my content and selling used books. And so earlier today, he actually reshared a post that I believe was from 2016. And he was
Yep.
like, this is the first Reezy video that I ever saw. And this is what made me get into selling used books and start my trip down the rabbit hole. Um, it was like 2016, right? You said it had like 6,000 subscribers or something.
Yeah. Well, if you look at the timestamp on that particular video, I think you posted it. It was like December 6, 2016. And I remember I found it in January of 2017. And I can kind of go into like how I stumbled upon it. But yeah, I remember I saw that video. And at the time, I thought that everything I ever bought on Amazon, I was buying from Jeff Bezos, right? Like I didn't even know a third party seller was a thing. Then I see this video of this guy with like 6K subs and he's flipping books. I'm like, wait, what? Like, can't be that easy, right? And of course it's not, but that's kind of what started the whole journey.
That's amazing. And how long did you sell books for?
So I did books so I graduated from college May, I want to say 20th of 2017. And like literally May 21st, the day after graduation, I started going to thrift stores. I was so ready to roll. And I did books for probably 2 or 3 months because that's the amount of time that I had between college and graduation. And when it actually ended up moving to Chicago. So when I moved to Chicago, I didn't have a car, so I couldn't really go around and keep going to thrift stores. So that's kind of when I transitioned to some online arbitrage. I was doing some book buying off of Facebook Marketplace and like buying from old textbooks from like I guess UIC, University of Illinois Chicago students until some girl that I bought her textbooks off of her. I wasn't being misleading in any way, but she asked me what I was doing with them. And I told her, I was like, oh, I'm selling them on Amazon. And she went back in the Facebook group of all the students and called me all kinds of nasty words because I was making a profit off of her textbooks. So I was just like, okay, so maybe this book thing, maybe I'll just focus on online arbitrage.
Yeah, it's funny how that's a funny dichotomy of, right? I mean, if that's the right word to throw out $1,000 word there, but like people that don't sell or are not hustlers or are not entrepreneurs, you know what I mean? They feel like you're doing something wrong. If you're hustling and trying to make some money for yourself, it's okay if McGraw-Hill wants to print this book for $8 and sell it for 300. They got no problem with that. But when an American comes along, especially one of their fellow students, and tries
Right.
to make a buck, they got to get all Karen on you. Like, what? I don't get it.
Well, and it'd be one thing if I lied to her, but she asked me and I straight up told her, I was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to turn around and sell them on Amazon. And I remember the look that she gave me. She like didn't even respond. And then she walked, like I paid her and she walked away. And like, I'm literally walking back to my apartment and I get a Facebook notification. And she tagged me in the Facebook group saying, nobody deal with this guy. He's terrible. And of course, all the comments were like, oh, this guy's a scumbag. I'm like, lady, you gave me a price. I paid you. Like, am I the villain here? Like, I don't know. It was crazy to me, but yeah, it is kind of is what it is sometimes.
Crazy. I was got a couple comments about mic audio. So let me know, guys. I haven't streamed. I've been on StreamYard for like a year. So let me know if there's a echo of some sort. Do you hear an echo, Corey? Or are we good?
No, you sound good to me. And I mean, my dog was barking there a little bit, so that could be what it is.
Huh.
You sound good to me.
Curious. All right, let me know in the comments, guys, if you have any issues. No, I see. Okay, a lot of people are saying it's good, no echo at all. Usually, when there's one person that says it and everyone else says it's good, it's usually on that person's end. So we're gonna go through here with it, but I'm going to be straightforward and transparent with you guys. So the reason that we're doing this this live stream, this call, is we're promoting a program that Corey is hosting starting next week called the Wholesale Challenge. So it's is it 7 days or 5 days? 7 days?
Well, it's actually technically it's 8 days because we do like a graduation ceremony at the end. So as far as the content's concerned, it's 7 day. Well, I guess 7 nights technically, but we've got 4 additional sessions during the day where we're going to be interviewing subject matter experts. We can get into the weeds later, but yeah, that's
Cool.
kind of the gist.
Yeah, but basically, if you want to learn wholesale, Corey is hosting a 8-day training program where you get to work one-on-one with him. It is $650. There is a $100 off coupon code if you use the code Reezy100, and there is a link in the description or in the pinned comment of the chat. You should be able to find it. And the great part is that it's literally no risk. They're offering a more than money back guarantee. So if you take the course and you're unhappy for any reason because you think Corey looks like Mark Zuckerberg and that threw you off, then you get your money back plus an extra $50. And I mean, nobody does that, you guys. And you know that I always like to keep it 100. I don't ever associate with any people that are scammers or untrustworthy. And not only is it Corey, but you're also working with Chris Grant, which is another one of the top legendary dudes in the Amazon reselling game with over a decade, if not 15 years of experience selling online. And also same thing, like super trustworthy. I've literally never heard anybody say anything bad about him. Like most marketers, you're going to hear something. I've never heard anything about Chris ever. And it's not their first rodeo. Everything is super solid. So click the link in the bio, sign up if you want. Course starts Monday. I'll shove that down your throat a few times in this broadcast. But the other main point of this is that some of you guys might not be able to afford that. And so I am going to wring out as much information from Corey as I can in this next hour, hour and a half, however long I can have him here. I'm going to squeeze him like a wet towel, and we're going to just lightning round this thing and get as much information out of him as we can. So feel free to put any questions you have in the chat as we go along. I don't have much experience wholesale myself, so I feel like my organic questions are going to be probably most of the same questions you guys are going to have. But if you have more questions, put them in the chat. I'll put them on the screen, give you a little shout out. We'll answer them. And some of you are probably going to learn enough from this that you won't even need to join the wholesale challenge. But enough of that. Let's actually get into some of the information. So my first question for you, Corey, is if someone is going to be selling wholesale, or they're looking to going into wholesale, and they are an experienced Amazon seller with retail arbitrage or online arbitrage, or let's even say they sell used books, like what do you recommend is their course of action? And this, I'll probably guide you more on this as we go along, because this is like a multifaceted answer. But like, how does someone who knows how to sell on Amazon as a retail arbitrage seller or a used book seller effectively go into wholesale?
So you kind of set me up with a softball, right? Because I think that arbitrage sellers, whether you're doing retail arbitrage, whether you're doing online arbitrage, those folks are in the best position by far to add a wholesale component to their business, right? Now, they have the option to either add wholesale to their existing business or make a full transition, right? There's no right or wrong answer. But let's just assume you've been doing arbitrage for a little while, right? You've had some success, you've made some profit selling some brands. And the beautiful thing about that is you already have a portfolio of profitable brands that you've sold. So that's the first place I suggest you look. Now, when you're looking at the brands that you already sell in your arbitrage business, I call it the 2 buckets method, right? You sort those brands into 2 buckets. Bucket A are your big brands. I'm talking like Procter and Gamble, Nestle, super big brands. And bucket 2 are your kind of small to mid-size, more like niche brands, right? So with bucket A, the big brands, you call them up, but instead of asking for a direct wholesale account with the brand, you ask for an introduction to an authorized distributor in your area, right? Because I mean, let's be honest, like you're not really going to get a direct wholesale account with Procter and Gamble. So that conversation looks like, hey, Procter and Gamble, my name's Corey. I have a retail business. I'm down here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Would you mind connecting me with an authorized distributor that services my area? Right? 50% of the time, you're going to get a warm introduction to a legit distributor in your area. That brand is essentially going to walk you in the door.
And that's best
Now,
accomplished with a phone call
oh
or
yeah, I mean you
email.
can. Well, actually, I personally I like to email first, right? Because I can bang out a bunch of them at once, and then I like to follow up with a phone call, right? So that's just my preferred method. You could just email, you could just call, but I kind of like a hybrid approach. And now, just to kind of close out that thought, you've got bucket two, right? Which are kind of like your small to mid-size brands. And then for those brands, I like to go straight to the source, right? I like to call up the brand or send an email straight to the brand and just ask for that wholesale account, right? But I don't just want to ask for a wholesale account. I want to be very specific about what I'm looking for. So I like to name drop specific products. I like to have quantities in mind that I'm ready to purchase, because the more specific you can be, the more likely they're going to take you seriously and the more likely they're going to grant you that account.
Awesome. So, and then and you recommend just going after those big brands right away, or do you recommend going more on a product basis first, to where like you look for products that are selling well on Amazon and then say, who makes this? Let me contact them. Or are you just saying one of your first steps should be just calling these big brands and getting accounts with distributors?
Well, so that's kind of what I was saying, right? Like, and I'm taking the approach of like, I already have a successful arbitrage business and I'm already selling some brands in my arbitrage business. So that's why I say go to those brands first. And typically, I mean, Reezy, as you know, most arbitrage sellers are flipping like big brand name products, right? Whether they're
Yeah.
like Mattel toys or like, Head and Shoulder shampoo, which I think is Procter and Gamble. So that's why it's like you already know the product sells because you're already selling it in your OA business. So you've already kind of done the legwork. Now it's just a matter of finding a supplier for that specific product. And the best way to do that is to call up the brand and have the brand tell you the suppliers that are near you that carry their products. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense because you already have experience with those products, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
already selling them, right? And I've done stuff like that in the past when I was trying to get into wholesale, where I would have products where I sometimes would have trouble figuring out who distributes it, or
Mm-hmm.
and can't get a wholesale account with the large brand directly. But then I would be in the store late at night while they were stocking shelves, and I would see the product in a distributor box,
Mm-hmm.
on in the aisle
That's a cheat
unpacked,
code.
and then I would just photograph the box all sneakily, and then go back home, and then now you know who you need to contact. You know what I
Yep,
mean?
exactly. Well, and another kind of hack as well is a lot of products, especially grocery products, on the packaging, guys, it'll literally tell you on the packaging who the distributor is. And now sometimes it might say, distributed by, and it's just the manufacturer. But there was a product, I don't think I have it in my pantry anymore, but I made a YouTube video on it a couple or month or two ago, where on the packaging it says distributed by XYZ distributor, right? And I didn't recognize the distributor. So I Googled the distributor, I found their website, and come to find out, not only do they carry that brand for the product that I had in my hand, but they also carried like 150 other brands in the grocery category. So like that right there is a lead that I found for free from a product that I had in my pantry. And again, that's just very low hanging fruit opportunity.
Right. So let's let's go a little bit. I'm gonna skip over a lot of stuff because I'm literally the dummy this this thumbnail is made for. So you get an account with a distributor. Let's say you get a couple of them. Big distributors. They got hundreds, thousands of brands. What is the next step? Are we manually checking all of these? How are you possibly going through all of those catalog in a way, that actually makes sense, like time wise?
So great question. And I remember when I was starting, in fact, I probably did like the manual line by line, product by product method for years. I mean, probably close to 2 years. And then eventually I had my virtual assistant team doing that exact method. But we found a much more efficient method. And it's basically just think of it as like reverse sourcing, but in a wholesale context. So instead of going through because like when you open an account with a distributor, Reezy, like you said, sometimes that catalog is going to be 2,000 products, 5,000 products, sometimes 25,000 products. Like they're going to have a massive spreadsheet that will literally take you weeks to go through one by one. So
And
what you do
what
is
about when they, sorry to interrupt you, but what about when
you're
they
good.
don't have a spreadsheet? getting the VA team to make a spreadsheet, basically.
Well, so the method that I'm actually about to explain applies either way, right? The spreadsheet's kind of irrelevant. What you want to make sure that you can get from your supplier, and again, we're assuming that we're talking to a distributor here, right? You want to make sure that you can get a list of the brands that they distribute, right? And now pretty much every distributor on their website is going to have that list of brands. And if for some reason they don't have it on their website, it's as simple as asking your sales rep, right? And they'll be able to tell you like, oh, these are the 100 brands we carry. And so once you have that list of brands, the game becomes finding the best selling products from those brands, right? So it's as simple as either typing the brand name into Amazon and just finding the better selling products from that brand and putting them out like kind of on your short list. That's what I like to call it. Or using a tool like Keep a Product Finder or
Yeah.
Smart Scout to do the exact same thing, right? So the idea is like, and I like to take it
So
like
that way you don't have to look at everything in the catalog.
yeah,
You
yeah,
just
yeah.
whittle that
Because
down to like, let me not, yeah. Instead of looking for a needle in a haystack, let's see what a needle looks like first,
exactly. That's
and
and
then
that's the
look for
exact
that.
analogy. That's the exact analogy that I use. It's like let me find the needle first, and then let me go find a good price on that needle, right? So to kind of
Right.
elaborate on that example, so I like to take it, let's say 3 to 5 brands at a time. So supplier gives me the list of brands that they carry. I go on Amazon or Keep a Product Finder or Smart Scout, and I find 3 to 5 products from each of those brands that are already selling well, right? That aren't dominated by Amazon, that have existing FBA competition. Because if there are existing FBA sellers on a listing, that means that brand is more than likely reseller friendly, which means I can get it, right? And then once I have that short list of products, it's as simple as going to the supplier and either you can either like look at their price sheet and see if their short list is on their price sheet and you're kind of just like searching for it on their price sheet with your short list. Or if they don't have a spreadsheet, like you said, it's as simple as asking your sales rep for a quote, right? So you say, hey, Mr. Sales Rep, I know you carry XYZ brand. I actually know the exact products that I want from XYZ brands. I got it on the list right here. Could you give me a quote? Or better yet, you know the quantities you want, right? Because you look at the listing, you did some quick analysis, you decide how many units you can more than likely sell in, let's say, 2 to 4 weeks. And you say, hey, Mr. Supplier, I want a quote on this exact product for, let's say, 100 units, right? And they're going to get you that quote. And that is by far, that's
And
going to save
when
you
you're
weeks.
whittling those products down, you are specifically basically only looking at show me the brands, show me the products within this brand that move this amount of volume. So whatever search corridor you're using, probably a sales rank corridor to find those.
Yeah. So, and like honestly, and people think this is blasphemy, but I don't even really look at sales rank, right? I just want to, because the thing is I like to base my buying decisions on how much gross profit a product will make me per month, right? So, me personally, I don't source products that I expect are going to make me less than $400 gross profit per month. Now, when you set a monthly profit threshold, think about it. That automatically factors in the sales rank, essentially, right? Because if I'm only going to sell 1 unit per month, but it's going to make me $400 profit every time I sell it, then that's fine, right? And that sales rank might be 600,000. But by
Right.
the same token, if a product's only going to make me, let's say, $1 per unit, but I can sell 400 units per month, and assuming the margin isn't
So then you
terrible.
just look a little bit wider, right? Because since you don't really
Yes.
know the cost of the item until you nail it down and then see if they even have it, um, for then you're kind of what are you looking at then? Because since you don't know the cost, you don't know the profit per unit, so you must be looking at some kind of sales volume metrics, or are you just looking for good listings?
So yeah, so that's kind of what I was getting at is I'm not necessarily looking for like a specific sales rank. I'm more so looking for a couple of factors. One, I'm looking for existing FBA competition, like I said. So I want to see 2, 3, 4 plus other FBA sellers on that particular listing. And so some of you watching might be thinking to yourself, why would you want competition? That doesn't make sense. Well, like I said earlier, when there is competition, that means that those sellers are buying that product at a profit from somewhere, right? If they weren't making profit, they wouldn't be selling it. So that means that we probably can too. So that's the first thing I look for, FBA competition. Second thing, I want to make sure that the listing's not dominated by Amazon, right? So as long as Amazon isn't on that listing for, let's say, more than 50% of the last year, according to Keepa, then I'm going to at least put it on my list. And then the last thing is, I mean, it's got to be selling some amount, right? Like if
Right.
the product's selling once every 2 months, I'm obviously not going to look at it. But as long as I'm seeing some sort of sales activity on a monthly basis, at the very least, it's worth looking into because, again, you don't know how profitable it's going to be until you get that quote back.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes complete sense, and it's like a overall. It makes sense overall across many different strategies of Amazon selling, because if you make your search, whatever type of search you're doing, have like rigid corridors, you're always going to miss out on something. No matter, it's the same type of methodology where you're like, if your minimum profit that you want per unit is $4, don't really set it for $4 on your
Right.
search. Like widen it out, because are you really not going to want to sell something that's $3.99? What if it sells
Right.
way more than the $4 item? You know what I mean? So it's like this is the same type of reasoning with that.
Well, and it's just like, and I remember this for like, this is how I got connected with Chris Grant years ago in the Tactical Arbitrage Facebook group, because this was a super common mistake that I made that a lot of beginner online arbitrage sellers would make when using a tool like Tactical Arbitrage. We were setting our filters way too tight, right? So, for example, everybody that starts OA, they want to find products that are going to make a 50% ROI, that make $10 profit per unit, that they can sell, 100 units per month, right? And you and I know as experienced sellers, those are home run products. They exist, but you don't find those every day. In fact, you don't even find those every week. So by setting those filters that tight, like you said, Reezy, you're going to miss out on the,
All the
5,
all the
10,
base hits.
50 really good, yeah, really solid base hit products that you just wouldn't have found otherwise. And that's why, to use the tactical arbitrage example, Chris Grant suggests don't even use filters if you're going to use tactical arbitrage, right? Let it ride and then do your analysis, like kind of set your filters
Inside
up
of
to column
tactical
them.
arbitrage, which has the most customizable view with the sales rank
Exactly.
graph and et cetera, everything you need. That actually makes a lot of
Exactly.
sense. Let's continue, but I want to give the chat some love so we can answer some of these questions, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to be a little weird because they're going to be a little bit out of order with, the way that we're going right now, but I just want them to know that we're seeing them, and, let's answer some of these questions. So T Smoke says, can you still get brand ungate issues in wholesale?
So, I mean, I guess, will you run into brand ungate issues? It depends on where you're buying from, right? So if your distributor is authorized by the brand, they're buying directly from the brand, you should have zero issues, right? Now, that doesn't mean you're going to get ungated on the first submission. In fact, recently it took us 8 submissions from a legit distributor. Everything about the invoice was fine. We literally just had to resubmit the same invoice 8 times.
Yeah,
So
so
as
we're all
long
dealing
as
with that Amazon bullshit no matter what.
yeah, as long as you know your invoice is solid, it will work. You've just got to kind of roll with it, like stick with it, keep resubmitting.
And what about the margins? What type of margins are you making on products? And if you can do like ROI and margin, because I know a lot of resellers just do ROI, and when you say margin,
Mhm.
people get confused. But either way, like what type of percent profit are you bringing in? You're not getting those 50%. I'm sure they're there but like with wholesale, I would assume like overall it's maybe 20, 15, 10. Like what kind of margins are you making?
So, like general rule of thumb for a wholesale business, you can expect 10 to 20% gross margin. Right. And I give a general range for gross margin because everybody's operating expenses are going to differ. So for somebody that's doing all the analysis, that has none of this outsourced, that's doing all their own shipping, right, they're going to be on that higher end. But for somebody like myself, where I've got a virtual assistant team, we use a prep center, we're going to have higher operating expenses. Our gross margin is going to be kind of on the lower end, right? So when it comes to ROI, again, 20 to 30% in that range, right at around 25% ROI is pretty typical.
Yeah, and then when the dust settles, after you pay all the overhead and everything, a little bit less.
Yep.
Um,
And well, and just to give people like when it comes to net margin, now assuming you're paying yourself like a market rate salary, right? Net margin after I pay my salary, for example, right around like 5%.
right.
And again,
Br-
this is like fully outsourced.
yeah, briefly before we go on to the next question, we kind of glossed over it, but like wholesale is a desirable business model. It's what I consider to be in the upper echelon of Amazon type business models. And it doesn't mean that it's better because it's subjective, but it is more scalable. It's like it's kind of like people sell used books or whatever, and then they go into doing retail arbitrage, and then they get tired of driving around. So maybe they do online arbitrage, and then they realize that all of their work really only equals money one time. So is there a way we
Yep.
can do this where my work can, maybe it's slower to grow or whatever, but the work will make money long term? And those two
Exactly.
models are going to be wholesale and private label. And both of those are completely different beasts that have completely different things. But I believe that wholesale is a great target for people that have skills, like you were saying, in retail arbitrage, because
Totally.
it's literally the same thing.
Translates
The
perfectly.
only thing that's changing is how you're sourcing the products, and then your logistics with like receiving and shipping to Amazon, and then like your back end, your accounting, management, blah blah blah, all that. But you're still selling products that have existing demand that people want, and you don't need to run ads to make people buy them. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
not a PPC thing. It's not a I got $1 million of stock on a boat, in between here and China
It's
or
held
like
up at
whatever.
customs.
Exactly. So, yeah. So if you don't know or understand, what wholesale is, basically you're buying from wholesale, either from manufacturers or distributors, and then selling it on Amazon. Most of the time, FBA. Do you do any merchant fulfilled?
We are 99.9% FBA. There are a couple like one-off products that maybe when we did our analysis, we didn't realize it wasn't FBA eligible. That's happened like once or twice. And so in those cases, we'll just have our prep center FBM the product. But like general rule of thumb, everything we're sourcing, all of our analysis is geared towards FBA.
And do you have any experience with, this is just like another like sliver question, but any experience with doing wholesale? Like, I guess it's like drop shipping wholesale where you're selling on Amazon, but your wholesaler is shipping for you to the customer?
So we haven't done any like drop shipping from supplier to customer, but and we can kind of go down this rabbit hole if you want, but our model primarily, Reezy, is like I'd say 80% of our purchase orders from our suppliers are going straight to FBA. So we're like kind of skipping over the prep center, right? So we've got really good relationships with some of our suppliers where we place the order with the supplier. We literally just email them our shipping labels, our box labels, our pallet labels, however the product's being shipped, and they just send it straight to FBA for us, right? And we typically just pay Amazon to prep. And so that makes it like we even get to skip over the prep center, which saves us a lot of money a lot of times.
Yeah, that's the way to go, man. That not only saves you money, but that saves you time. You're only having
So
to
much
ship it
time.
once.
It saves
You're
like, I mean,
also
when you're
saving the planet for those earth conscious people out there.
well, and another, this is kind of like a super, I mean, I wouldn't even call it like super advanced, but this is kind of a negotiating method that we've used successfully. So I'll give you an example to kind of paint the picture here. So we had a supplier, or we have a supplier that we've done a lot of business with. And this particular supplier offers free shipping over, I think, like $2,000, right? And like all of our orders are over 2K typically. So we're always getting free shipping. Now, just because we're getting free shipping, like somebody's still paying for it, right? And it's the supplier. So what we did, and this, I got to give and she's a Filipino employee, but she's my head of operations. That's what I refer to her as. She is a killer. So I give her credit for this method. She went to our supplier and said, "Hey, Mr. Supplier, you guys are covering our shipping because we're over 2K every time. How about this? How about we cover the shipping? We'll send you the shipping labels. So from now on, we're paying for shipping, but how about you throw us a little bit of a discount on the product, right?" So what we got is we got a 10% discount on this one product in particular that we were selling a lot of, and got them to agree to ship straight to Amazon, right? Because they're no longer having to cover that shipping cost every time. So does that make sense? How like we like
Yeah.
got them to ship
And
straight to FBA
overall, your
and got a
discount
discount?
is greater than your shipping cost, your inbound shipping
Well,
cost.
yeah, and also too, like it saves us money in two ways because one, now we're not having to pay the prep center to prep the product and then ship it
Right.
again. We're only shipping it one time and we're getting a discount on the product. So it was like a double win. And
Yeah,
when she
got it.
told me, she told me, she's like, "Hey, I just negotiated this for us." I was like, "Okay." Like do that again with somebody else.
Heck yeah. That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's awesome. This is an interesting question. What if you find a killer product and they don't have it in their catalog? What do you do then? What if they,
Great.
like obviously this manufacturer makes it, but this distributor you're talking to doesn't carry it. So do you put it on like a side list to like make sure we ask the next one for this, or ask the manufacturer for other distributors because they're not all carrying all the products?
So great question. So the key here is that if a distributor carries a particular brand, they're not going to carry every product from that brand, right? Because some of them have thousands of SKUs. They might only be carrying a subset of the products from that brand. But what we've done and what typically works is, again, if a distributor carries a brand but they don't carry a specific product, you just ask the distributor to special order that product for you. And I'd say 8 to 9 times out of 10, that distributor can literally say, oh, yeah, let me hit up the brand. They'll call up the brand. They'll order that product for you and they'll bring it in. It might just take them, a week, 2 weeks, whatever the lead time is from the manufacturer, but it's called a special order. And I would even say 30 to maybe even sometimes 40% of our wholesale orders are special orders because the supplier doesn't normally carry those particular products.
That's very good information. I don't know if you guys' spidey sense went off, but mine did a little bit on that one, because I bet a lot of people, it's like they scanned a product in retail arbitrage and it didn't show up. They just move on to the next one. But if
That's
you
that's
know this,
opportunity.
you're like,
Yeah.
look, hey, can you call your boys and get us this product? I know you got a relationship with Procter and Gamble, and like, is this on your order sheet? Can you get us this? Yes, you can. Thank you very much. Let me send you a bottle of champagne for Christmas. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
we do a ton of that. And like that's an entire, I mean, you could even call that like a maybe not even a business model, but like that's a niche in and of itself where we've got a huge spreadsheet of what we've identified as other wholesale sellers where we know like we can basically pull up their storefront. We have access to a lot of the brands that they carry, but we might not have access to their specific products. And so these wholesale sellers have already done the legwork for us, right? They've identified the product. We know more than likely it's profitable because they're carrying it. So all we do is we just go through their storefront, and I'm literally just shooting like products over to my supplier. Say, hey, you got this one, you got this one, you got this one. He's like, yes, yes, no, yes. And it's like, okay, price looks good, order,
yeah.
right?
So
And I mean,
basically, reverse sourcing, storefront stocking, other wholesale
yep.
sellers.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like we were talking earlier, like if you know how to do online arbitrage, if you know how to do retail arbitrage, guys, don't be intimidated by wholesale. It is the same stuff, right? It's simple, but it's not easy, and the concepts apply pretty much across the board.
Yeah, it just seems like a little bit more phone calls, a little bit more emails, a little bit more relations, a little bit more expensive, right? Like,
Yep.
what kind of startup capital are you recommending people? Like, let's say someone buys the wholesale challenge, so they pay 550 after using discount code Reezy 100, link in the description, and but then they have no money. You know, they're like,
Don't
so
do that.
sorry, I have 2 cents left. You know, I got no money. They made a bad decision, obviously.
Right.
But what is your recommended minimum budget for someone who signs up for this to have to put forth to their first order or two?
So great question. So guys, I typically recommend starting capital in the 5 to 10K range, right? And that's starting capital for him. Are you sipping on a White Claw there?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a spiked
Nice.
water. We didn't have any Lacroix.
Nice. So yeah, I say 5 to 10K starting capital in addition to, if you were to buy the challenge or any other sort of information, right? Now, I used to say 3 to 5K, and you can certainly start with 3 to 5K. I had somebody in the chat of one of my lives the other day that started with 3K and they placed a great order. But rule of thumb, the more capital you have, the better. 5 to 10K is that sweet spot.
We just got another quick question. We got a bunch. I gotta go scrolling down. If I skipped your question, guys. If you see me answering a question that came after yours, feel free to comment your question again. You won't bother me. The more comments, the better. You know, I want to answer as many questions as I can to provide you guys the most value possible. But someone asked, is this for starting an Amazon store? So I can only imagine that person doesn't sell on Amazon at all. That's the type of question someone would ask. And I mean, it's a good question. We might as well ask you, like, is the wholesale challenge for people that have no experience selling on Amazon at all? Or is it much better for people that have a little bit of experience? Like, what do you have the framework for that? Or what are you, I mean, it's only 7 days, so I think I might know the answer, but I'd like to hear it from you.
Yeah. So, and I get asked this question all the time, right? Is this for brand new sellers that have never sold before, or is it more geared towards established sellers? Like, guys, I'll be honest with you. If you have an Amazon foundation, like this is geared towards somebody that is not that like has an Amazon seller account, right? So this is a perfect fit for somebody that's doing arbitrage or that sold books or even that's done private label and that wants to either transition into wholesale or add a wholesale component to their business. But the caveat is we've had people that have taken the challenge. In fact, we had multiple people that took the challenge back when we did it in July of 23 that were brand new to Amazon. They had capital and they've had success with it. So it's more of a mindset and like willingness to put in the work thing. Like you could be brand new, but if you've got the right mindset, you're willing to put in the work and you execute on what we teach you, you will crush it, guaranteed. Right? I've seen people that know Amazon very well that take the challenge, but they don't execute and they fail. So it's really more based on the person, but having that Amazon foundation helps.
This is so funny. There's a comment in here from Ryan Chapman, and he says, I saw you in Home Depot looking at the clearance section the other day. Did you get anything good? No, I didn't. But also, I was looking for stuff to do remodeling since we just bought a house. So, I mean, I'm always looking for clearance too, but I honestly don't have time. Today, I went to get some screws and I got stuck in Home Depot for 2 hours.
How?
So,
What were you just looking for screws?
well, we ended up getting some stuff for the door, and then we started looking at trim. You know, it's like if you give a
Right.
mouse a cookie type situation when you go in there. You know, I'm sure that's what they expect to happen.
Yep.
Let's go through a couple more of these questions for sure. This is a good one. Someone is curious. Do you do a lot of bundles? And if you're, let me preface it real quick. If you're watching and you don't know what a bundle is when you sell two items on one listing on Amazon. And generally, you probably would be making this listing yourself, but the easiest way to explain it is like peanut butter and jelly in one listing. So that instead of having to buy peanut butter and jelly, you can just buy this one listing and it has both of them, or shampoo and conditioner, or a car wash kit that comes with a bucket and a scrubby and some soap or whatever, you know? So it's like a multiple things in one. And the reason it's great is because you're providing value to the customer, but also you are saving money on your per unit Amazon fees as well. So that, I think this is a great question. I'm curious.
Yeah, so we do a lot of bundles actually. Now, we we've sold like and I use kind of like the terms multi-pack and bundle kind of interchangeably,
Yep.
but we sell on plenty of like multi-pack listings that are existing listings that have been around for a while and they sell great. And we've also recently started creating some of our own bundle listings actually under our own trademark, right? So it's kind of like a wholesale private label hybrid, and we don't have to get super deep in the weeds on it, but that's something we've been experimenting with lately, and
You
it's
can't
done
get
really
brand
well.
registry on those though, right?
Well, actually, we do have brand registry for our own trademark, and then the idea is we take or X amount of existing brand name products,
Mm-hmm.
bundle them together, and then include an additional component that is our own branded product. So, for example, a magnet with our brand name on it, or a towel with our brand name on it, and that's what
Right.
allows us to list it under our trademark brand name. But like we all know that what's driving the sales for that product, that listing, is the two like brand name products that we bundle together, if that
Right.
makes
And
sense.
if this is a little bit over your head, the reason you want to include that third listing, so instead of just peanut butter and jelly, also, you know, how to make the world's best peanut butter and jelly sandwich by Mark Zuckerberg. And it
Right.
would be
Like a
like
little like
a
book.
book that you
Yeah.
made, you know what I mean? And you throw one in each one. And that's something that's not replicatable, which means that your competitors can't list on that listing because they can't get that item to make the bundles. Now, if it's under your brand and it's under brand registry, that means you could then kick people off. Or I thought that you couldn't. Oh, I know. I'm getting confused. I'm thinking that you can't list, you know, you couldn't put like Welch's brand unless that was the main item or something, like what the wording
As
with
far
that
as
is.
like the brand, like the actual brand name on the
Right, but you're
listings,
using your brand, but that's technically,
correct.
you know, that in the magnet example, that wouldn't be the main item, you know, or I guess I don't know how they quantify the main. It might be fairly subjective.
So according to terms of service for that bundle, that example that we just gave, for that bundle to be within Amazon terms of service, that like my branded item, so like let's say Corey brand magnet, technically needs to be the highest value component of that bundle, right? So magnet's not a good example. That's clearly not within terms of service. You can't make an argument that a magnet is going to be more expensive than, let's say, a conditioner, right?
Right.
But as far as like being able to kick people off that listing, so when you apply for brand registry through one of Amazon's partnered attorneys, you get like an essentially expedited brand registry. So you can get brand registry access within like a week, but the full trademark approval will take anywhere from 6 to 9 months. So let's say somebody jumped on one of my listings, I actually don't have the ability to kick them off of that listing until my trademark is fully approved by the USPTO, right? Which as of right now, our trademark isn't. So don't jump on my listings.
That makes sense.
Right.
Here's a good one. This is kind of a broad question, but what's the typical MOQ, which stands for minimum order quantity for wholesale distributors?
Yeah, Trey, good question. So it really depends, man. It depends on a supplier by supplier basis. So I think a huge limiting belief that newer wholesale sellers have is that they're going to have to drop 5K or 10K or 30K on their first wholesale order, right? But that's not exactly the case. So, guys, at this point in our business, we work with probably 6 to 10 main suppliers. That's just who we do the bulk of our business with. And these are big suppliers. And guys, actually only one of them has an MOQ. All of the other ones, big suppliers, zero MOQ. I could place a $50 order with them. I could place a $50,000 order with them. Now, the one supplier that I mentioned that does have an MOQ, their minimum is 50 grand. And that's one that we met at a trade show. They're a very large, very reputable electronics wholesaler. Kind of hard account to break into, but we've done some good business with them, and that's been a fantastic supplier. So it's like once you kind of scale up, you can play in those higher like minimum order accounts, and that's can be where you can get some really good leverage.
Yeah, or maybe maybe make a order with a few other sellers that you
Yes.
trust or whatever to say, hey, I can't meet this $50,000 order threshold, but like if four of us get together, that's only 12.5 each,
Yep.
and then we could actually maybe make it happen,
Yep. We do a lot of
You
that. We've
also
done a
you
lot of
also
that.
mentioned the trade show. And before I go on to the next question, I want to ask about that because we talked about sourcing products. And we can talk about that a ton too, but I'm curious how important you think going to trade shows is, or maybe what your goals are when you go to a trade show, because I think if you don't know what you're doing and you just go there like, oh, I'm going to meet some suppliers and like, what are you doing? Are you going to talk to every single booth? That seems like not a good strategy, because some of them will be terrible fits or not have products that fit your needs, or like, is it more of like, oh, these brands I've been having a hard time getting a hold of and I see they're at the trade show, like I am going to go to dinner with these guys or meet them, or like what is the best strategy for success when going to, the Vegas like ASD or whatever?
Yeah, so great question. So I love trade shows, right? I think that, and it depends on the show, but ASD is a great example. And I go to ASD twice a year. So for those of you watching and you're like, what the heck is ASD? It's a really big retail wholesale trade show that happens in Vegas twice a year. And there's a ton of distributors, wholesalers, brands there in attendance. It's almost like, I almost think of it as like a big, like open air market, right? Like you've got people, there's 1,000+ booths in every hall, and there's 3 halls. And you've got people like running booth to booth saying, like, hey, you got this, like people just making deals right there on the spot. It's a really like fun environment. At least I think so. So approaching trade shows, right? And let's assume you're a new seller. So the advice for approaching trade shows is going to mimic the advice that I gave earlier on like reverse sourcing products from distributors. So most trade shows, now ASD is a super general trade show, right? There's suppliers from pretty much every different category at ASD. So if we're using ASD as an example, like choose a category of supplier that's going to be at ASD, and before you go, research some brands that you want to buy, right? So for example, at ASD, there's an entire hall of suppliers, 1,000+ suppliers dedicated to like beauty, cosmetics, and perfume. So what you should do is, let's just say you're going to ASD, you want to source cosmetics. Well, you might make a short list of, say, 12 to 15 beauty brands before you go to the show that sell well on Amazon because you search them on Amazon. And now you're just going to, instead of going booth to booth saying like, just kind of wide eyed, not knowing what you want, the exact brands you're ready to buy. So you can go up to a booth of a beauty distributor and say, hey, Mr. Distributor, I've got a short list of brands I'm looking for. Do you have any of them? And they might say, oh, we've got 6 of them. And you're like, great. Well, now let's talk, right? Much more focused conversation. And even better, if you can kind of go a little more granular and find out which products from those brands you want to buy. Right.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds like a whole, a horse of a different color. Some of you guys are too young to get what that reference is, but like, hey, Mr. Supplier guy, we really want to sell your products. And then they're like, really, like what brands? And you're like, crickets,
Right.
But versus them bouncing the ball back and you're like, actually, I really want to sell this brand and particularly this line of products or even this specific product. They'll be like, damn, did his homework. You know what I mean?
And
maybe that might get you a little bit of a more attention extended conversation, and a better chance of either getting a deal right then and there or, getting a good number to contact them or whatever, or making sure you get that call back.
That's everything. Like specificity is everything. And guys, I'm telling you, when you know what you want, down to the product, down to the quantity, even down to the price that you're willing to pay, suppliers don't give a shit if you're selling on Amazon, right? That is how you show you're serious, by knowing what you want. And I'll give you guys an example. So when I went to ASD this past August of 23, so I'm very fortunate in that my Amazon account is 6.5 years old at this point. So a brand that I'm able to sell, that we sell a ton of, is Gillette razors, Gillette shaving cream. 99% of sellers, they're not just gated in Gillette, they're restricted. They can't even apply. We can sell just about every Gillette, right? So I went into ASD. I walked up to a booth and the guy asked, he's like, what do you guys do? What do you like? You could tell he wasn't into it. I'm like, oh, we're an e-commerce retailer. We sell a ton on Amazon. And he's like, okay. He kind of like starts to give us like the normal spiel. And I could tell that he just wasn't taking us seriously. But on his table, I noticed a Gillette product that we sold a ton of. So I was like, hold on, is that a Skin Guard 8 count? And he's like, oh yeah. Like, what about it? And I was like, what's your price there? He's like, $15. I was like, how many do you have? He's like, 370. I'm like, we'll buy them right now. I was like, tell me where to wire the money right now. And he was like, okay. And then like, he completely changed his tune because I saw a product. I knew exactly what I wanted. I was buying it at $16.25 and he was offering it to me at $15. And I was like, done deal, no brainer. And I ended up buying another like literally 12 different products from him over the course of the next 2 days. And now I buy from him probably every week, right? Because I knew what I wanted and I was specific.
Because you were ready to pull the trigger on that one.
So ready. Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, it's like he changed his tune completely. One, when I placed an order, but two, when I was able to talk, like when I knew what I wanted, right? It's like I said, all about specificity.
That's very, very interesting. Just the difference of like, not really paying attention, about to like whatever, like the last 12 people that came to the table versus like, no, let's do some business. So are you saying in that scenario that they actually have product? They don't have the product there at the trade show, do they?
Oh, well, so not all of it, right? But pretty much every trade show at the booth, they're going to have a sample of products, right? And the cool thing about trade shows too is that like they're there to cut deals on the spot, and they typically offer really good deals at trade shows. So this particular vendor, it was like day one, the trade show doors had opened maybe 30 minutes prior, and he just happened to be one of the first suppliers that I saw. So he had a lot of really good, they call like show deals available. We were able to buy up a lot of them, and like other guys were coming through to buy them, and I was like, sorry. He was like, sorry, we sold out, right? Like all the best deals go within 30 minutes to an hour on day one of trade shows.
Yeah, like
that's why I like to get there.
You're not
early.
As fast as Corey. Corey got him.
Well, and that's why in ASD in March, I will be standing at the door the second the doors open, and I will be beelining to the same guy's booth, and I'm going to try to buy every piece of Gillette that he has that I'm able to sell, basically, as much as he'll sell me.
That makes sense. Do they tend to have like, I guess I wouldn't call them loss leaders, but do they tend to do that to bring people to their booths? Like they have some product that's high demand at a little bit less than the normal, you know, distributor price or whatever to just to bring people to the table?
Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, to use that same example, right? Like I said, we paid. I think at the show he was offering that product for $15, which like I couldn't find that product for under 16 anywhere, and it's like a really really hot SKU. So I mean, I just have to imagine that and they've got to be like at the best case breaking even, right? More than likely, they might be losing 25, 50 cents a unit. But again, I ended up buying 10 other SKUs from him that over the course of the next 2 or 3 days. So even if he lost 1,000, 2,000 on that one particular product, he made a killing off me on everything
Yeah, it's
else.
well worth it. Like your lifetime value of the relationship with you as a serious purchaser is way better.
Right.
Let's go over to this question, and this is we get a lot of broad questions, but I'm interested to hear your answer in this one. How quickly could someone turn 10,000 into 100,000? And this is from T Smoke.
Yeah, so I mean, if you think about what was I saying earlier, right? The average ROI in wholesale is going to be 20 to 30%. So assume 25%. So if you spend 10,000 on profitable inventory and you sell through, it's going to come back as what, 12,500. So you could kind of do like the compounding math there. But hey, if you've got low overhead, you're doing your own sourcing, you've got low expenses, you're not paying for crazy software subscriptions. I mean, you can see how you can compound that money relatively quickly. And honestly, that's what got me into wholesale in the first place was a Larry Labarsky video that I found in
Shout out the
20.
GOAT.
Yeah, he's OG wholesale. I consider you like OG like Amazon YouTuber, but he's the guy that got me into wholesale. And he has a really good YouTube video. It's at least 6 years old now, where he just sits down and he breaks it down like on a Google Doc. He's like, you got 5K, you spend it on wholesale inventory, it comes back as
I
six.
thought you were going to do the Brooklyn accent, man.
Oh
You were like,
no.
for a second, I felt like it was coming in.
No, but it's just he like very, I guess, accurately painted that picture of the compounding effect, where if you buy good inventory, you are going to compound your money.
Right. Yeah. So it might not be super sexy, but it's sustainable. It's scalable. You know what I mean? If someone had a question earlier, like if they're shipping directly to Amazon for you or to the prep center, does that mean you don't need a warehouse? And
Yeah, no, I don't.
go
I
ahead.
don't have a
Sorry.
warehouse. We had a warehouse back in, so we actually bought a warehouse. It was like 2,000 square feet back in early 2021, and then we sold it like 6 or 7 months later. And at that point, we just outsourced all of our logistics to a prep center. So either our supplier is just straight up shipping everything straight to Amazon and foregoing the prep center, or if the supplier isn't willing to do that, they ship to the prep center preps, prep center ships to Amazon. So I haven't seen or touched a product, Reezy, since like probably August of 2021. So like, yeah, almost 3 years now, or I guess 2.5 years.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Not touching products, but not out of touch.
Right.
Street Matt says, do you usually look for an ASIN that has stable pricing? An example, MAP, or do you just make smaller order quantities for more volatile price history?
So first, let's define MAP or MAP for people watching that might not be familiar with that. So
Yeah,
guys,
good point.
what MAP means, it's commonly referred to as a MAP policy. It stands for minimum advertised pricing policy. And basically, it's a price that the manufacturer makes you agree to not sell under. I feel like I didn't explain that very well. So, for example, if a product has a MAP price of $99.99, the manufacturer will not allow you to sell for below $99.99. And some people might think, well, is that price fixing? Is that legal? Well, no, it's perfectly legal. And the reason that manufacturers have MAP pricing policies is because they want to protect their brick and mortar retailers. Because if a customer can go on Amazon and buy a product for $70, right? Because everybody's under MAP and the retailer's selling it at 99, the retailer's not going to reorder from the manufacturer because a customer can just buy it on Amazon for cheaper. So to answer Matt's question, products with a MAP policy in place are good if the brand is actively policing MAP, right? So there's a lot of brands out there that say, "Oh, our MAP price is, $100," but you look on Amazon and everybody's at like $75, right? That's a product that I would totally ignore because the brand is obviously not doing anything to control the pricing. But if the brand is like, this is our MAP policy, and if you break it one time, you're done, and you look at Amazon and the price is like completely steady for the last year, then that's a product that I like because your margin is basically guaranteed because you know where you're going to price it. But as far as like, do we target MAP only products? Not really. Like I said, if the MAP products, or if the MAP policy is being enforced, we'll take a chance on it.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, because that's kind of like I see a thing that a lot of times, and I don't really know because I don't have the wholesale experience, but I have heard that a lot of manufacturers, distributors that do have trouble with enforcing MAP, they like maybe that's a feature that you could offer to them to be like, hey, I will help you to enforce MAP on Amazon more. I know Amazon, like you guys, like I can help you with all things Amazon. We can make your listing better. I can teach you guys how to report people who are violating MAP, and we will adhere to MAP or whatever, as far as, because sometimes people don't want to deal with Amazon sellers, or they might just try to shut you down and say, no, we have enough Amazon sellers. And then, you would have a rebuttal to be like, I know you have some Amazon sellers, but they're not really doing it well. And as a
Mhm.
professional Amazon seller, here's what we can offer. Or like, how important is that kind of stuff?
So that's definitely more of an advanced strategy, right? So, and we do a lot of that, whether we're approaching the brand or some of the brands that we already work with, we already kind of offer those, I guess, services, if you want to call it that. But that's when you're kind of getting into more of like, you're almost playing more of like a marketing agency in that scenario, right? So if you're going to approach a brand and say, hey, Mr. Brand Owner, your Amazon channel is a mess right now, right? You've got a ton of sellers, your listings are crap, you're not running PPC. We can help you fix some of those things up and in turn help you grow your sales on Amazon. Well, in order for you to be able to fulfill that promise, you've got to know how to optimize listings. You've got to know how to run effective ads. You've got to know how to help them control distribution, right? To get some of those unauthorized sellers off of their listings. So that is an entirely separate skill set. But that particular business model of partnering with brands to grow their sales in return for being an exclusive reseller is a very profitable and sticky strategy. So there's some brands that we work with where like we do exactly that. We help do all the things that I mentioned in return for either exclusivity or the ability to be one of, let's say, a small handful of authorized resellers on Amazon.
That's awesome. Question about the course in general. And if you guys don't know, there is a challenge that Corey's hosting starting on Monday. It's 7 days. It's $650, and you can get $100 off using code Reezy100. There is a link in the description and at the top of the live chat. And Seth is asking, how do I measure my ROI on the challenge? Is it exclusively a wholesale roadmap, or am I walking away with wholesale distributors?
So, Seth, good question. As far as like, do we just give you distributors to contact? We definitely don't as part of just the regular challenge itself. And the reason for that is like, I want to teach you how to fish. I don't necessarily want to give you fish, right? So, you're going to learn the entire wholesale business A to Z. And also, the what I believe to be the most valuable component of the challenge is not only do we give you the content and show you how to execute, but you get lifetime access to our Facebook community, which right now is a few hundred people that are in your position or are ahead of you, doing wholesale at a high level, answering your questions. And I'm also in that group every day answering questions. So if you get hung up on something or if you need guidance, I mean, you've got me and, like I said, a couple hundred other seasoned wholesale sellers in there that can kind of help you out of a rut.
And I feel like the community is oftentimes more valuable than like the course or the access to
It is.
the teacher, because I feel like if you're focused, you learn everything you're going to learn or you're going to absorb pretty quickly. But then having the other people around you that are either in the same boat or in the boat behind you or the boat in front of you, like they remember what it felt like to be where you were, so then they want to help you, and then it
Yep.
kind of just like keeps paying itself forward and backwards, so everyone is helping themselves. It's just like such a good feeling to see the success from other people that are like they walked the path that you're walking. and I feel like that's, that can't be understated, like the community is always like the major key.
Well, and just to kind of add to that, we've got people inside the community that like they're buying products from each other, they're selling products to each other. They're kind of what you mentioned earlier, Reezy, they're partnering on deals. So let's say they find a really good opportunity, but the supplier says the minimum is $10,000. Well, instead of having to think like, oh, who do I share this deal with? They've got a few hundred people there within the community that they could tap into at any given time who are going to jump all over that deal and share it with them. So I mean, listen, the course content, like what you're going to learn, is second to none. Like I will put my name beside that. But guys, the community is where you get the real value because you're surrounded by like-minded people. Like you can't even really put a price tag on that, in my opinion.
Yep. Can't understate the value of the community. Alan Barr, hopefully I'm saying your name, could be Alon, I guess, like the A Elon, Alon. Alon Barr says, Corey, how do you differentiate between a wholesaler's site that hasn't been updated since 2000 from a scammy website? Trying to avoid misleading sites that redirect you.
So that's a good question. So one of my buddies, shout out to Michael Tona. He's got a good strategy for, I know it's like it's easy to do what I'm about to tell you. I just don't exactly know how to do it. So there's a way, Reezy, you might know, where you can check the age of a domain, right? And also, I think you can check the country where it was registered. And I don't know if it's a website that you go to or if it's like
Is
within the
that through the who is query or
maybe.
something?
Yeah, maybe. But bottom line, Alan, you can see and I wish I knew how to do it. You can see like when that website was created, right? And so my buddy Tona posted a really good example on Twitter the other day of this exact scenario where he was like, "Hey, I found this new supplier. I don't really know if they were legit or not." So he did that quick search and he saw, "Hey, this website was registered 6 days ago, right? In Pakistan." Which, shout out to our Pakistani friends, but like that doesn't sound very legitimate, right? Especially when this supplier is billing themselves as a big distributor of these big brand name products, this fully built out website that kind of looks kind of scammy, and they created it 6 days ago. You know what I
Right.
mean?
And then they want you to pay, with like a Payoneer wire or something, like
Yeah.
red flag.
Yep.
We got a question from Holden Harold, which I like that Cabbage Patch Kid card profile. That's great. Retail arbitrage here for the minimum 2,000 wholesale being sent directly into FBA. I feel like I would worry about storage fees, or do you just know the products will sell fast enough?
Yeah, so Harold, that example that I gave earlier, that was very specific to like us particular supplier that I deal with, right? So to like go off that previous example, that product that we were buying from that supplier, $2,000 worth of that product, I think was like 3 or 4 weeks worth of inventory. So it was a pretty fast moving product. We bought it, like we've sold it for a few months at that point. So I was very confident in knowing that I wasn't going to be sitting on that product and paying storage fees.
Awesome. What about what kind of mistakes have you made? Like, I
Oh,
mean, I'm sure you
so
make
many.
less and less now. I mean, I'm sure you still make mistakes now. Everybody does. But like, what are some of the mistakes that you made that you wish you would have known how to avoid, when you were first getting started? Stuff that, you watched some Watch Me Amazon videos. Shout out to Larry. You thought you did your homework, you're gearing up to go, and then you fumbled. Like, what were those?
Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, too many to name, but a couple that come to mind would be like, for example, back when we were just in our heavy supplier research mode, right? We were looking for a lot of suppliers. We were just trying to open as many accounts as possible. And one of the mistakes that I made in doing my supplier research, and I believe this is a common mistake, so I hope this will help some of you guys out. But we were reaching out to these quote unquote distributors where they actually just sold to anybody, right? Like they build themselves as a wholesale distributor, but in reality, all I had to do was create an account on their website and I could buy something, right? So there was no barrier to entry. So I guess to sum up the mistake was not looking for those barriers to entry. When in reality, the bigger the barrier to entry, more than likely the more profitable the account's going to be, or the fewer other Amazon sellers have access to that account. right? So it wasn't doing my due diligence,
What
wasn't doing my research.
what kind of process that just gave me like 18 questions. What kind of process is a normal like healthy with a new supplier? What is like a healthy like account setup process, like when you're, like you're saying you don't want to just be able to like make an account and order right away. So like what are you looking for? Like what do you expect?
Yeah, so good question. So again, in my 5 years of trial and error at this point, I have boiled down like a legit distributor to three main criteria, and I'll share those with you guys now. So, like I said, for years we spun our wheels reaching out to quote unquote distributors or wholesalers that weren't actually distributors. They were just basically retailers or brokers, and their pricing sucked. So we wasted a ton of time. So what I found is that legit distributors always, at least in the context of our business, meet three criteria. So that first criteria is they're going to be strictly B2B, right? Business to business. That means I can't just buy something off their website, right? I've got to apply for an account. I've got to fill out an application. They've got to verify that I'm a business in some way. So that's the first criteria. They got to be B2B. Second criteria is they've got to carry brand name products that are already selling well on Amazon, right? So again, that's another mistake that we made is we would find a supplier, we'd open the account, and then come to find out they just carry a bunch of brand like unbranded or generic garbage that they're just like bringing over on a boat from China and trying to sell, right? So that's a second criteria. They've got to carry brand name products that are already selling well on Amazon. Third criteria is they've got to primarily sell to retailers, right? So I want this distributor, I want their main customer segment to be retail businesses because I'm a retailer. And if they're used to working with retailers, they know what I need. They know the types of margins I'm expecting. I'm just going to be a better fit for their business. And I'll give you guys an example of when this kind of like clicked for me, right? So it was a couple years back. There was a supplier that we reached out to, and they met the first two criteria, right? They were strictly B2B. They carried big brand name products that were definitely selling well on Amazon. But when I got on the phone with the sales rep and when I, in hindsight, kind of looked at their website, they actually didn't sell to retailers. They sold primarily to hospitals, schools, and the government, right? So when I was on the phone with them, they were like, "Hey, Corey, like, it's great what you guys are doing, but we don't typically sell to retail businesses. You guys don't really fit the mold of the customer that we're used to working with, so we can't open your account." Right. And that's when it kind of clicked to me. I'm like, oh, I've got to be working with distributors that are used to selling to retailers. So those three criteria, again, if a supplier meets those three criteria, like 99 times out of 100, they're going to be a good fit for you. It's just going to come down to price. And price is something that is negotiable.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like trying to remind me, let's go back to like the price negotiating here. I want to hit you with this question, which is like a higher level question I think is really good. Gravy, Chris Gunkel says, "Hey, I did 2.1 million pounds wholesale in the UK last year. What suggestions do you have for scaling in 2024?"
So, Chris, if you're already doing seven figures per year, like what to do, what works. It just comes down to buying more inventory. And I'm certainly not trying to dumb that down for you, Chris, because like I know you know that. You might be thinking like, well, okay, well, how do I buy more inventory? I think it comes down to setting a spending goal on a weekly or monthly basis, right? And kind of like work back from your revenue and decide like, okay, what's my average gross margin? If I work back into how much money do I need to spend to be able to sell a revenue amount that's going to make me that gross margin, you can pretty easily back into how much money you need to be spending on inventory on a weekly basis to hit a certain number of sales, right? So it's setting that spend goal and obviously not forcing it, but making sure that you've got enough opportunities coming down the pipeline to where you can buy quality inventory at that dollar amount every week, every month.
Right. Yeah, I feel like a lot of times I have that pretty much that same answer for people in many different scenarios when they're like, "Well, how do I scale?" And I'm like, "Just buy more shit."
Do more of what you're
But
doing,
yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. But
Like,
obviously
you know
that's
what
like
to do.
easier said than done most of the time. And it's like I really like the way that you explained it, which is like look at what you're doing and what it takes to get there. So it's like if you're doing 2 million and you spend 1,000 a day, try to spend 2,000 a day. These are
Yep.
just numbers I'm making up out of thin air. They're not relative at all because theoretically, if you follow all the same procedures, that should double your sales if you're
Yep.
buying, similar or whatever. Or maybe it comes down to buying products, maybe buying products that have larger, that you can sell through larger quantities, and focusing on those, or it's just some type of thing. Or maybe it comes down to you need to hire more people so that you can process inventory faster, or you need to use a prep center, or have you considered shipping directly to Amazon so that you can cut out, and get 20% more products sold in a month because they're just able to move faster. There's like the reality of how to accomplish, buy more shit is a little bit different than for everybody. You know what I mean? Like I'm a fan of like people ask me questions and then I want to ask them like 5 questions so that then I can give them like the better answer, for their scenario, because it's different for everybody.
And I think that to kind of double down on that discussion, right? When it comes to like any goal, right? So for example, Chris wants to scale his revenue. He already knows what works. His answer is to just buy more inventory, but have a goal for what that looks like on a weekly, monthly basis. So some of you might be saying, well, maybe I'm new to Amazon or maybe I'm new to wholesale. So my goal is just to place my first wholesale order, right? Which should be your first goal if you're new to wholesale. So I always like to look at it in the sense of like, what inputs do I need to execute on a daily basis to where it makes like achieving my goal inevitable, right? So, and that's to I guess mention the challenge again. That is what we give you, or one of the things that we give you as part of the challenge is we give you a 21-day action plan. So it's like you learn everything about wholesale in that 7-day period, and then we give you a plan to execute on, to where if you execute on that 21-day action plan, and we had people that did that, and everybody who executed achieved success, right? So that might look like for a new seller, all right, I'm going to have 5 new conversations with new suppliers per day, right? Not reach out to 5 new suppliers, but I'm going to speak to 5 new suppliers. And I can virtually guarantee if you have a conversation with 5 new suppliers every day for 21 days or 30 days, like you will be drowning in profitable wholesale opportunities, right? Like it will make achieving your goal of placing your first order 100% impossible not to do.
That's awesome. Action items, huge. So Brock
Yep.
has a quick question. I think this is for me. Says, Reezy, I've been watching all your videos recently, just getting started. Do you do wholesale? So no, I don't do wholesale, but Corey does, which is what this video is about. Is next week, starting Monday, Corey is hosting a 8-day program that teaches you everything you need to know about wholesale. It's called the Wholesale Challenge. Corey is someone that is knowledgeable and has 5 years experience doing wholesale full time. It is $650. There is a $100 off code if you use Reezy 100, gets you $100 off. And there's a more than money back guarantee, guys. So if you haven't heard me say that, like, and you want to learn wholesale and you can't afford it to get in, like, this is the time to get in. Not only is Corey a dude who knows his thing that I recommend, that's trustworthy, they're offering a more than money back guarantee. So worst case scenario, you take the course and you're unhappy with it for any reason, you get your money back plus an extra $50. And honestly, I don't know of anybody else offering a more than money back guarantee like that. And so, like, you really have nothing to lose. So if you want to learn wholesale, Corey is starting the course on Monday. The sign up period ends on, I believe, on Sunday at 11:59, like right before midnight.
Yeah.
So get in the game and start your process of learning wholesale. Let's see.
And somebody else asked, and I've got a good kind of story here. So somebody said, "Can you share some more fail experience?" And they said,
Yeah,
"Those
let
we
me.
went bankrupt." But I guess I didn't quite go bankrupt, but I do have a pretty significant like fail experience where I lost a lot of money on a single product. So there was one product. This was probably back in like 2020-ish, where it was a marine two-way radio, very high-end product. We were buying it for 148 and we were selling it for 199.99, right? So I think we were profiting around like 22-ish dollars per unit. Now, this was a product that had a MAP policy in place. So the manufacturer said, you can't price below 199.99. So our margin was virtually locked in, right? Now, we bought a lot of this product. We probably bought a couple $100,000 worth of this product over multiple purchase orders over about a year and a half. So this was like a tried and true product. It was doing great for us. We made a lot of money selling it. And our supplier gets a big shipment in, and we bought about 80K worth of one product. Yeah, I guess it was one product for 80K. We sent it into Amazon. It checks in. And then the manufacturer, literally the day the product checks in, the manufacturer says, "Hey guys, we're nixing the MAP policy. You guys can price wherever you want."
Dang.
And I'm like, why would you guys do that? So of course, next day, the price drops to 195. A week later, it's 189. 2 weeks later, it's at basically break even. And so within about a month to 2 months, we ended up having to liquidate that product. We got all of our investment back. So 80K minus probably like 5 or 6K. So we only ended up losing maybe 5 or 6K there, which, I mean, some of you might be saying like, that's a lot. And it is, but I think it could have been a lot worse, because had we held out and tried to like say like, oh, well, maybe we'll hold out, maybe the price will bounce back, it ended up going a lot lower. So
right,
we probably would have lost.
You lost less than 10% of your investment.
Yeah, which, I mean, I've definitely lost more than that before.
I think a lot of people don't talk about that enough. Like, everyone talks about, hey, let's make some money. Hey, it's so easy. You can make money online at 10 to 20 or like whatever. But people don't talk about protecting your profit, which is like it's just as important as making profit and buying, you know, products that will sell well. Like, whatever your business model is, you can't marry your business decisions, because you're not always going to be right. I like to say it's kind of like playing poker, right? To where like, if you know how to play poker, you know that you're supposed to
when to hold them and when to fold them.
Exactly. And in certain scenarios, almost all skilled poker players, like bluffing aside, would do the same thing in that scenario. It's based on, you know, what cards are on the table, how much chips you have, what is the blind right now. But then if the turn comes and it doesn't match, you know what I mean, what you wanted or what you expected, you need to be willing to fold, you know, and try and recoup some of your money so that you can play more hands in that game. And like, I think that poker, you know, whatever example is like really analogy is like extremely good with business. And a lot of people don't talk about it. Like, I did private label and I failed ultimately, but I was so invested in like emotionally in the project of doing it that it took me 2 years basically before I finally sold the last unit. And ultimately, when I did the math off the like 3,000 or 5,000 that I spent, I think I only lost like $500. And like, what I realized, opportunity cost, and like whatever you want to say, my headspace, because like by then I was done with private label. Had I realized faster that I made a mistake, you know, that's like a huge skill in selling, is knowing that when things aren't going to go your way as soon as possible, so that you can get your money out of the game in whatever shape and form you can, so that you can roll the dice again. Because had I got it back sooner, I would have rolled the dice again and tried. But since it was a 2-year drawn out process, by the time I realized it, I was like, nah, to hell with private label.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's opportunity cost,
because the headspace is
money,
a big part of it.
Exactly. By then I was like, I don't want to play this game anymore. I'm just going to go back to retail arbitrage, which is not to say that it's not successful, but I did learn from some big private label sellers later that they do like a McDonald's style thing where they launch like 5 products every month. And these guys are huge. They do 100 million a year private label. They launch 5 products at once. Because why? Because a lot of them are going to fail, and they consider their best skill set recognizing which ones are winners and which ones are not. That's their most important skill set, so they can liquidate the losses and double down on the winners and then try again the next month.
That is so true. And pretty much every private label seller that I've talked to that's successful says the same thing. It typically goes along the lines of they launch 3 products at a time, most of them, because they know one's going to crush it, one's going to do so that they're going to have to end up killing, and one's going to flop like big time. So the goal is, as quickly as possible, determining which of those 3 is the winner and which of those 2, because technically those 2 are losers, right? Which of the 2 are losers that they need to kind of cut ties with, double down on the winner, launch 3 more, find the next winner, and literally just rinse and repeat.
Does that help it happen with wholesale in some shape or form?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Cause I mean, one of the other like strategies that I preach, and this goes for arbitrage, wholesale, really any business model. I mean, we're just talking about it for private label. You want to go wide, right? When you're doing your sourcing. I like to test out a lot of different products. So I mean, we've gotten to the point now where if we test a product, more than likely it's going to be solid, more than likely we're going to replenish it. But if we're testing out, let's say we place a purchase order for 8 different products from a supplier, well, maybe 4 or 5 of
And
those products.
what do you mean by testing? Smaller
Oh,
order
so
quantities at first?
yeah, exactly. So we might order, 2 to 3 weeks of each different product as opposed to going like super deep on one or two. And if we, like I said, to use that same example, if we test order 8 different products, we might only end up reordering, 3 to 5 of them, right? Because 3 to 5 are going to be solid, they're going to be profitable, we'll keep selling them. But 3 to 4 of them, either make a small profit or break even, or even maybe make a small loss. But at least we now have 3 or 4 products that we can keep selling for some amount of time.
Right. And usually there's a much, a large difference in price that you pay for those items, right? When you're buying the test
Mhm.
quantity versus buying. And do you know that when you're making the test quantity? Do you know that, like, hey, we're only buying 10 of each one of these 8 products and this is the price? And yeah, maybe it's not profitable at this price, but if it does work out and we do buy 100, this is going to be our price, or, this is our target like, how does that work for you?
So typically, as a rule of thumb, like we don't, or we try to avoid buying something that like we know is not going to be profitable and hoping that we can get a better price down the line. Like the only time we would do that is if I had that conversation with the supplier and I'm like, hey, Mr. Supplier, like we're just going to test this out, but like, can we go ahead and agree on a price that will make us profitable should we decide to reorder? Right. And that's kind of rare, right? Like typically, if we're placing a test order, it's going to be profitable from day one. And then when we go back to reorder, that's when we try to get aggressive and squeeze out as much margin as we can, right? So we might say, hey, we tried 10 on the first go, it went well. It's already profitable. Let's negotiate as hard as we can to squeeze an extra, 3, 5, 8, 10 points of margin out of this product and make it like a real winner.
That's awesome.
Mr.
Uh,
Supplier goes hard.
No, he does. I love how you keep saying Mr. Supplier. Like I want like I need like a comic strip, like in
I need
my
like a
head, there's
bobblehead. I
like,
need like a Mr.
yeah,
Supplier bobblehead.
Mr. Supplier. Like, what do you say, Mr. Supplier? Like put him in some TikToks or something.
Right.
Um, let's see here. We got a question from Alon. Says, hopefully I'm saying your name right, buddy. Feel bad when I do that. But he says, Corey, thank you so much for today's email about the test purchase order. And can I ask why you assume the buy box is shared equally? Why not use your average buy box winning and subtract that number from the existing competition?
So he's referring to, so I send out a newsletter every Thursday. And so today's newsletter topic was basically my product sourcing criteria, right? And he's basically saying that, hey, you left out a criteria for buy box percentage, right? Why are you assuming that the buy box is going to be shared equally? Now, the reason that I don't really factor like buy box percentage into my calculations on just any old product is because the repricer that I use is Seller Snap, and Seller Snap is elite. It's not cheap, but I mean, I swear we're in the buy
Yeah, it's
box
like
like
250 for the small plan, right?
yeah, it's like we pay 500 a month for it. And so I mean, on some listings where we're competing with, 5, 10 other sellers, Seller Snap is winning us the buy box 25, 30% of the time. So as long as there's not a MAP policy in place, like if I'm able to compete on price, which is most listings, Seller Snap's going to make me sales, right? So the only time I'm looking at buy box percentage as a factor in my decision making is if there's a MAP policy in place, and I've just got to make sure that the buy box is rotating because everybody's at the same price, and I know that I can't like undercut people to win the buy box. So I hope
Unless
that
the
makes
person
sense.
that's winning the buy box most of the time is Amazon, right?
Right? Yeah. I mean, if
Then
Amazon, I
do you
was going to
stay
say if
away from
Amazon.
Amazon listings in general if Amazon's on it, or what?
So it depends, right? That's the point that you made there is the other scenario where we would look at the buy box rotation. Because if Amazon's on the listing, but they're sharing the buy box according to the keep a data tab, we'll sell that listing all day. In fact, I can think of 2 SKUs in particular that we sell a ton of. Amazon is on that listing 365 days a year, but they share the buy box like constantly. In fact, we sometimes are in the buy box more than Amazon is. So when you go and when you're looking at Keepa, you can check out that data tab. And within data, there's a buy box statistics like tab, I guess
Right.
you call it.
Have you seen
And
the new buy box thing on SellerAmp? It's kind of new. It's like, I
oh
don't know.
no, I
It's like
actually haven't
6
noticed.
months, maybe a little bit longer, but it's on the app, on the browser and on your phone. It gives you a little pie chart that's like
Oh
a
yeah, yeah, I've
visual
seen that.
color coded for the, you get one for variations, but then they also have one for buy box, which is, I'm telling you kids nowadays, you got all the bells and whistles, you know what I
I
mean? Back in
know.
the day, we didn't have none of that. We were over here
Nope.
like looking at, reviews and like to
We
count
were using
reviews
camel,
and like
camel,
no, we
camel.
were using paper and pencil and just like writing down tallying reviews to like attribute which variations were selling more, like there was no way, and looking at just at Keepa and trying to guess, Keepa didn't have that data. You would look at the spikes and see where the buy box price was at that time. And like, I don't know. I just feel
Yeah,
like we have so much data nowadays. There's a lot of mistakes that you would make back in the day that you're not going to make today.
yep.
Um, this is a good question, and I know we talked about it a little bit, but let's go ahead and throw it out there. Leaf Fit to Roman Yard and Landscaping Services should have said changed it. Says, where do you find the numbers and emails for big brands to contact them about distributors? Thanks in advance.
So, I mean, this is kind of a cop out answer, but literally just Google, right? I mean, any big brand is going to have a very easy to find website, right? So it's a matter of just finding their website, usually trying to get a number for somebody in sales or like a sales at brandname.com email address, and then just hitting them up.
Yeah, no one wants to hear that answer, but I honestly feel like sometimes as a teacher, as a parent, as a husband, like that might be the most valuable answer I can give people in a lot of topics. Like, did you
Yeah,
Google it? Have you
right.
Googled it? Like, should I Google that for you? I can Google it for you. You want me to just, like remember that website? Let me Google that for you. I don't know if that is a thing
Is that a
anymore, but
thing?
yeah, it was like you would put in the search and then it would give you a link that you would send to people and it would take them there and it would like animate them like click here, type this in, and then it would type it in for you, and then it would like smoothly transition to the actual Google results, just to like add insult to injury of like, hey, did you know you could Google stuff, right? Like,
That's funny.
and not even Google. Now we got Chat GPT, guys. Like, it couldn't get any easier, like let's talk about that real quick. I know you're getting tired. I just saw that yawn right there, but like,
Like I
are
told you,
you
I've been up for a while.
oh dude, probably been up for 2 days. What are you using Chat GPT at all in your wholesale business?
Yeah, so I'm trying to find additional ways to kind of implement it into the business. And so something that actually Chris Grant is working on, I think he's throwing it in as a bonus for anybody that uses his link. So not to direct people away from Reezy, but he's putting together he's calling it a wholesale GPT. And he's essentially training it on all of the wholesale challenge sessions. So the GPT is going to be kind of like learning along with us. He's feeding it a lot of my tweets, a lot of my YouTube videos, and just a lot of the content that we put out there around wholesale so that it
Nice.
can almost be like a wholesale mentor, essentially. So if you have a wholesale related question, you can ask this very specific wholesale GPT and it'll give you the answer. But I mean, as far as within my business, I've used it to find trade shows, right? So there's a prompt, I'd have to dig it up somewhere, but there is a prompt that I've used to identify trade shows. And then also, too, guys, as part of the wholesale challenge, one of the bonuses that we give you is a Chat GPT prompt AI cheat sheet for Amazon sellers. We got a lot of cool prompts that are going to be included for free in a PDF format that you can copy and paste into Chat GPT as part of the wholesale
Is
challenge.
Nate helping out with those? I feel like that's
Oh
Nate's
yeah,
wheelhouse.
that's like his yeah.
Nate is the Chat GPT gangster.
Yeah, he's like he's got a software for everything. Rakin even
Yeah.
said that the other day. He's like, yeah, Nate's got a software for just about
Yeah,
everything.
give him 10 minutes, he'll probably make a software for it, right? Like
Right.
he's like, "Hold on, I made a group for that. Let's go in
Yeah.
there." Shout out Nate McAllister, Mr. McAllister. I just realized he's got the same name as Kevin from Home Alone, the
I knew you were about
McAllisters.
to say that. Yeah.
That's funny. Um we got another question here. So from Alon says, Corey, you said there's a ton of replenishables and tools in automotive, but if you find yourself replenishing your jigsaw bi-weekly, are you sure everything's fine? Not really sure what that means.
I think he just means like, are you a sane human if you're having to like buy a new saw every week? You see what I'm
Right.
saying?
Yeah,
So, I
yeah.
mean, but you got to think about it like it's not the same person buying this stuff every week, right? Like some of these brands, like for example, Milwaukee, like we've sold a ton of Milwaukee hand tools, power tools over the years. And like some of them we sell 10, 15, 20 units a day, but obviously they're to different customers, right?
Right. You get any returns off those? I mean,
Oh, yeah. I
remodeling
mean,
my house, I might be in, in the market for some slightly damaged power tools.
yeah, I mean, we definitely, I mean, that's actually something I've noticed about tools is that, and it kind of depends on the ASIN, but there are some products where like the return rate is going to be higher than standard for whatever
Right.
reason. But typically, I mean, at least on some of those products, they have pretty decent margins. So it's not as big of a
I
concern.
mean, I was actually just like joking a little bit, but gave me another idea, which is like how important is that, the reverse logistics of managing returns. If you're getting returns of drills that are like, I don't know, even if they're only 100, your cost has got to be like 60 or something like that. And so, like, you can't just throw it away, and I imagine they're not just going into the Christmas gift box. What are you doing, if anything, to manage your returns or your damaged products from your wholesale business?
So you're going to cringe, but we do have it set up to just, well, so we have it defaulted to, I guess, going to Amazon's liquidation program, which if they take it, which sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, you get like 5 cents on the dollar. Like it's, I mean, they're basically stealing it from you. And so for anything that doesn't qualify for liquidations, we have set up to just auto dispose, right? So, I mean, we are, like, I will fully admit, we're leaving a ton of money on the table by not having a returns processing process in place. But that's kind of the price that we pay for having a fully remote business, right? Like I'm willing to leave maybe 1 or 2 points of margin on the table to literally never have to deal with that ever. You see
Right.
what I
And you
mean?
you could deal
We
with
could set
that,
up, there are
but it
services.
would require some more energy from you, some employee hours, some of your
Yeah,
time, some, I fully understand that. It's like, I know a lot of retail arbitrage sellers that like sell shoes as their main business model. And, I'm like, what do you do with the returns? Oh, we just put them in the basement. And I'm like, then
I'm like,
what?
oh, that
Well,
sounds
when they start,
terrible.
when I can't get down the stairs into the basement anymore, I'll make a deal with a flea market seller, or
Mhm.
an eBay seller to buy them all for $20 a pair,
Right.
$15 a pair, or whatever. And you're losing money, but it's still like
You're
that
getting
was kind of
something.
a different time because now the return costs are so much higher. I guess you're paying almost the same to destroy and return an item, right? But it's still investing that plus the time and energy to deal with it,
It,
and
It's
it
more the
takes a
time
toll
that I'm
on
worried
you.
about. Yeah, like it's more the time that I'm worried about. Like I'm sorry, but I refuse to deal with that at this point in my business. Like what I should do, there are like returns processing services out there. So for example, you can like there are services where you can just send them all your returns and they will almost sell them on consignment. And so say when they sell them or if they liquidate them or whatever they do with them, they just give you a percentage of whatever they get for it, right? And that's honestly, it's irresponsible of me to not have that in place. It's on my to-do list of a million other things. It just hasn't
Right.
been a priority.
Yeah, I think that's a huge thing too, is to understand like where do your priorities lie, what time do you have? Because if you try, and I'm sure we've all done this the wrong way and many times, but like if you try to micromanage everything, you know what I mean, then nothing's gonna get done. And the reality is you should be focusing on, pushing the needle forward, and I think almost
Right.
all the time we make more, it's better to just say, hey, let me make more money than let me try and save money, like, and
Right.
for some reason, I think humans naturally will put more energy towards like trying to save money than trying to make money. Like you're going to spend
Yep.
like 3 hours cutting coupons to save $12
Right.
or
Or
whatever.
you're
When,
gonna wait in the Costco gas line to say, for 20 minutes to save 25 cents a gallon. Which like, I mean, to
right,
some people that's like I'm not gonna lie, that was me 3 years ago. I would wait in that Costco gas line all day if it that's what it took to get that cheap gas. But yeah, I mean at some point it's like you got to decide how much is your time worth and then yeah, what are you spending it doing?
Right. Daniel Song says, is it better as a beginner to try retail arbitrage or wholesale? And we kind of covered this earlier, but basically you could start with wholesale. But if you have that base, that foundation of being a retail arbitrage seller, it's going to be easier for you to get it going. It's not going to be impossible if you don't, but understanding how it works as a retail arbitrage seller is just going to be a little bit better because there's so many similarities between literally less things are changing than aren't between the two business models. You know, you're still sourcing products, you're still selling stuff people want. It's just, you know, you might be buying more, you might be dealing with some pallets, you might have a warehouse, you're talking to suppliers. So it's you can't really say is one better or the other. I think retail arbitrage is cheaper to start with and easier to dip your toes in, so to speak, but for the right person that is ready to go at it with, you know, initiative and motivation and they're not bullshitting, you know, join the wholesale challenge. You could be successful. And they've had people in the past that had no experience selling on Amazon at all that did take the course and were successful. So, I mean, that could work. Sorry if that's not the exact answer that you wanted, but it's kind of like a lot of the times it's not like a black or white answer for some of these
Right.
things.
Yeah,
Street Mac
Matt said,
got a little
yeah.
tip for you. You know, he's like, Corey, remember, move your tax bucket to a high yield savings account.
Yeah, I know. That's another thing that like I know it's like I know in my mind I need to do it. I just haven't done it yet. But I do have that well, I have something along those lines on my to-do list for tomorrow specifically. I've got a friend that's got an in at I think Navy Federal Credit Union, and he said that they've got I think a pretty good like high yield savings account option. So I'm applying for the account. I've got to get his referral to kind of get it
And
finalized. And
tax
then
bucket, they mean like the money that you save to pay taxes at the end of
exactly.
the year. Correct.
Exactly.
If you don't know what that means, it's like once you start making money on the internet, right, and you're not a W 2 payroll employee, you know, you're pretty much self employed. You can put yourself on payroll, but anything that's not on payroll, or if you're not on payroll, you have to pay taxes and no one's collecting it for you. So let's say you make 100,000, but you also spend 100,000 in the end of the year, you owe, I don't know, anywhere from 15 to $30,000 of taxes if that was 100,000 of profit that you can't show expenses for, and you have no money to pay it. You're going to be screwed. So, you know, it's a standard practice for e-commerce sellers to take a portion of the money that you make, that you pay yourself every time you pay yourself, and put it off to the side in a bucket that you can use to pay your taxes in the future. Your future self, it'll hurt now, but your future self will thank you.
Yep. Oh, somebody said that he gets 5.35% at Navy Federal. Yeah. Oh, CD. I see. I don't really want to put mine in a CD. I'd rather put it in just like a high yield savings.
This is we're gonna a couple more questions and we'll wrap it up for Corey. We've almost been going for 2 hours now, hour and 40 minutes. Thank you so much for your time, Corey.
Yeah.
Alan says, Alon says, how do you overcome a brand that doesn't want to expand its distribution network, even though you position yourself as the expert? How do you overcome that objection?
So, I mean, listen, there are some brands that like you're just not going to be able to get around that objection, right? It is what it is. In those situations, I like to just try to leave the door open for a follow up. I say, okay, understood. You guys aren't looking to expand your distribution network at this time. That's fine. Would you mind if I follow up X amount of days down the road, right? You know, a month, every quarter, whatever that looks like. And now typically they're going to say, yeah, sure, that's fine. Because honestly, they don't expect that you're going to follow through. And when you actually follow up like you said you would, well, each time you do, it kind of softens them up and further positions you as the person that they want to work with whenever they do decide to reopen that distribution network.
Right, because you're in a way, by being relentless, you're demonstrating, you know, professionalism. You're demonstrating, you know, that you're reliable, that you're still in business, that you're still interested. And, you know, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next month, but maybe something happens and they're like, damn, I'm gonna call Corey. I'm calling that guy. He's
Yep.
been bugging. I don't even know his name, but he's been bugging me endlessly, you know, every Tuesday for a year now.
And I
And
can't tell you how many accounts that's gotten me over the years, just from like sheer, like, I've even told people, I'm like, I'm literally not going to stop calling you. And like, yeah, I kind of say it like I kind of laugh after I say it. And they're like, okay, yeah. Like, and then,
right.
6 weeks later, 6 months later, They're like, okay, yeah, you weren't lying. Okay, like, what do we need to do to make it happen,
Like, what
right?
do we need to
And
do to make you quit calling us? Jesus, give this
I'm
guy
like,
an
sell
account.
me your product. Yeah, right.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I want to let you go because I know you're super tired. But guys, if you've valued this stream, like the video, leave a comment. Myself or Corey will hop in and answer some more questions later. And if you are interested in working with Corey to learn how to start a successful wholesale business on Amazon, the class starts on Monday. Sign up deadline is Sunday night. There is a link in the description. And if you use code Reezy100, you're going to get $100 off. And remember, it is a more than money back guarantee. So if you're not happy with it for any reason at all, you not only get your money back, but you also get an additional $50 back. Please, everyone, help me in thanking Corey for giving us almost 2 hours of his time. I know it's super valuable. I know you're tired. And thank you for joining us on this live stream. And of course, thank you to you, Corey.
Yeah, thank you for having me, man. I really appreciate it. I enjoy this stuff. So thank you.
Awesome, guys. Thank you for joining us. And as always, remember, if you ain't flipping, you slipping. Peace.